that club a couple of weeks ago, you had a lady come up and she was talking about how she lost her daughter. And since losing her daughter, she gained weight. She gained a lot of weight. She gains a lot of extra pounds. And we were tuning in, trying to support and help her. And I asked her, I was trying to make this connection for her between the food and the emotional element. And I asked her if she could explain in one word how she overall felt about losing her daughter. And what do you think she replied?
Did she say empty?
She said empty.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
You need to take it to this deep energetic and emotional level, because if you're not, you're overlooking something.
Welcome to the Cosmic Love Antenna Podcast. This podcast is meant to encourage you to connect within so you can share your light with the world. And now, here's your host, Harrison Ma.
Welcome, beautiful souls, to another episode, another session of your Cosmic Love Antenna. And I am super excited today for my beautiful guest and our beautiful conversation that we're going to have. And I'm going to get to that in 2 seconds here. But I want to quickly remind everyone, one of the major goals of the Cosmic Love Antenna is to connect inward so we can spread our loving light out into the world, and not just spread it out into the world, but spread it out holistically. And my powerful friend, my powerful colleague, my powerful mentor in many ways is joining me here today to have a chat specifically about this sort of holistic lens and how we can tune into this beautiful being that we are. My guest, Lesley Rubinoff, is the OG holistic bitch. She is a holistic practitioner, nutritionist based in Canada. But as is the trend, as is the theme here on this platform, she is so much more than that. She is a past life lover of mine. She is a deep and powerful friend, and she is a movement maker in the world. Lesley, welcome to the Cosmic Love Antenna.
Thanks for having me, friends. Excited to dive deep with you.
How are you feeling, Lesley? I know you're moving through some things at the moment. How's your energy?
I'm feeling much better. Definitely tapped into modalities that work, some Reiki, just moved energy, moved a lot of stuck shit, no pun intended. So yeah, I'm feeling good today. So you can have me today. If
you're listening, Lesley is a powerful practitioner that doesn't just speak from the knowledge that she has, but she speaks from the experience that she's either been through or is currently going through. And Lesley's doing a cleanse at the moment, and I'm asking about where she's at, and we'll get into that in a second. But Lesley, I want to start this conversation for people that might not know your voice, that might be new to your beautiful energy. I want to know about this bitch word, because there is definitely a acronym that I'd love for you to share about it. But I'm interested, people that know you, maybe on Clubhouse, maybe on Instagram, maybe from your Facebook group, they know this sort of moniker. I'm wondering where it came from.
So the truth is that holistic bitches is fairly new. Like, that wasn't my brand. It came with Clubhouse. I had to come up with a club. I wanted to separate myself. I wanted it to feel very Lesley, that raw, no Band-Aid, no filter vibe. And I wish I could take credit for the acronym, but I can't, because it's not mine. I don't know who. Somebody in Clubhouse had said to me, the word bitch doesn't mean, it's not a negative word, because it's getting a lot of heat for it. And I was like, it's not. Even before I knew the acronym, I'm like, you can choose to make a word positive or negative. It's just like the word fuck. Like, everyone gets antsy about it, but it can be used fun and playfully. So someone said, well, bitch isn't a negative word. It means be in total control of him or herself. And I'm like, yes, and their health. So that is where the bitch acronym comes from, but it is not mine. And I forget whose it is, but I energetically give them credit.
Yeah. And you attracted it, right? Through the community and the love that you put out into the world. And also something I'm going to get to in a second, but I want to go back to one thing, but also to hit on this idea of those words being challenges that people have. And I would highly encourage you, if you're listening to this episode and that B word does trigger some things in you, does cause some things to come up, right? You kind of have two options. You can either blame myself or blame Lesley, which I'm not looking down on. I've been in that space and place before as well. Or you could reflect it and go inside and why am I being triggered by that word? Because that, as Lesley mentioned, at the end of the day, words and language are a lot more powerful than we think. And we're in control of whether they impact us or not. My friend, I want to, before you took on that title, a big part of your label is being a powerful genius, a holistic health genius. And I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about your story, right? How did you end up being this bright light in the holistic and natural community? And why did you walk down this path?
I think it's a good question. And I think if you think about our purpose, why we're here in this life, some people can answer it and some people can't. And then some people can understand past life regression and understanding their multiple lives before. And I think a lot of this is not from this life. I think a lot of my knowledge, I think a lot of, I went to school, I'm designated.
Lesley, let me interrupt you.
Yeah.
How do you know that for people that might be new to the ancestral healing? How do you know that this is not a new thing?
It would be absolutely impossible to have the knowledge that I have and the abilities that I have to be within 38 years. And like, let's face it, when you're 11, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So that's not modern.
That's not like a proud thing either. Like, I just want to be clear here for people listening. Lesley's not saying that from I have all this and you don't. No, she's just being completely honest. Right?
Yeah. So I know that, I'm like, sometimes I'd be like, did I put a book under my pillow? Because like, I'm not the biggest reader. I don't dive deep into a lot of other people's works. And that's probably not a good thing. And it's not a bad thing. It's a Lesley thing. So if I'm going to be engaged by something, I have to really be engaged by something. But that doesn't mean I don't already know or can't teach what's already inside those books. You know what I mean? So I think intuitively, I always had like these hits and these signs from when I was really young. I mean, I chose to go plant-based when I was 12, not because it was cool. I'm 38. So if you do the math, that was a long time ago. Vegan and plant-based, that shit wasn't cool. Like there was nothing on the market. It wasn't, my mom's like, cool, figure it out. I'm like, all right, I'll figure it out. Things like chemicals always bothered me. Air fresheners bothered me. I fucking hated toothpaste. Like toothpaste, I would struggle to use toothpaste. Like all of those things. So all of those things kind of led up to things. And then when I was 15, a doctor tried to label me and give me my destination of PCOS and say, you're not going to have kids, basically produce hormones like a man. We'll just jack you up on a bunch of medication. And it just didn't feel right. It never felt right.
And let me pop in there, Lesley. I think this part of your story, I've heard you share it before. And I think, if you're a female, if you're a woman, or if you're a male with a woman or a female in your life, I think there's a really high percentage that you have been through that same journey in some form, right? I just had Kim, the vagina coach, on, Lesley. I'm sure, I think you know who she is. And we were talking about just the lack of education, the lack of understanding, the lack of space and nurturing and insight around the female reproductive center and the female womb and the vagina and all of it. And I think it is such an under the shadow, under the radar systemic issue that most women are facing. And I think that's a big, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, Lesley, but I think that's a big part of what allowed you to step into your power because of how many other people were in that sort of boat. Would you resonate with that?
I mean, at 15, I didn't know what was coming, right? It was just the start of a seed to be planted for me to kind of follow. And I kind of left that office, and it happened to have been a male practitioner, and I felt defeated. And then I was just like, hold on a second, like, no, I'm not going to do the things that they're telling me I need to do. I'm going to figure it out. And lo and behold, I figured it out. I figured out diet. I figured out exercise. I figured out a lot of things. And then when I went to school, which came pretty late in my life in terms of flipping the switch of what I was doing and
Can I ask about that, Lesley? Can I ask about that? So you've spoken to that before too, and I think it's really impactful for people to hear. What were you doing prior to the switch, and what made you feel like you wanted to switch?
I was in public relations, and I couldn't really give a shit about promoting other people's things and making people excited about other people's things. I wanted to be excited about my own things. And even in that space, I was like, maybe I could get like a national bank challenge, like a health challenge. And like these things were just coming. So I told my parents I was going back to school, and they told me, good luck, get a job. I was like, no, you're going to pay for me to go back to school. And I did. And I did so effortlessly. It was and it's not an easy program, but for me, it was effortless. It was the first time I was in an academia that was seamless for me. It's not because I was stupid, but I was never intrigued. I was never captivated by topics in school. So this came and I did it. I graduated valedictorian. I graduated with some of the highest marks that the school's ever given out. And it was easy for me, while other people like had anxiety and sleepless nights. For me, it was like, I barely had to study to get through this course, like barely.
Well, and going back to the ancestral past life element, we know why, right? And
yeah, sure.
We seem to think, and this is very, again, another important point here. We seem to think that anxiousness and lack of motivation is a sign of weakness, or a sign that we just need to keep pushing hard, versus the other side of that, when it comes easy, when it just flows and downloads and we align with it, we overlook the meaning behind that. I want to make this very clear for people listening. If you are picking up a skill and you're noticing that skill is quite easy for you to do, and almost like you have some prior knowledge, I would highly encourage you to look down the past life ancestral route, right? Because that's not only going to validate some of the feelings and perspectives you might have, but it's going to push it a little bit further. Lesley, so we're at this point now where you are standing in your beautiful power and starting to do things that are more purposeful. This is where you sort of branch out into some areas. And these are the areas I want to speak to today that I know you have a lot of knowledge in. And I think the first place, you hit on the plant-based eating, and we'll come back to that. But the first place I want to start is CBD. And I'm wondering where this factored into this journey. Was this early on, or is this also relatively new?
I smoked weed my whole life. I loved marijuana for a long time. And only recently have I given it up for over a year now. But it actually it fell on my plate. It came from a request from my community. I was involved with educating people about essential oils, about terpenes prior. And then people started asking me who do you buy your CBD from? I'm like, I have no idea what that is. And I immersed myself in it. And again, like a sponge, I absorbed a ton of information and I started teaching it. Originally I was working for a company that was an affiliate. They weren't multi-level, but they were just affiliate. And I basically broke their sales platform. They didn't think anybody would come in and do what I did in very short amount of time. So I started earning really good money there. And I was like, I think I can do this by myself. And I think I can do this a lot better and more intentional, and not make it just about the profit, but more about the education and the quality and the energy that goes into what became. And the blend kind of came to be. I have a business partner and we've kind of built this over the last, I guess, almost 5 years, which is crazy, into this wellness company. Yeah, it was, yes and no. Yeah. Yeah.
Let me ask you about, so right now in the US, Canada, I think has been at it for a little bit longer, but US and, even other parts of the world, CBD is, to say that it's blowing up, I think it's a bit of an understatement. And I,
Sure.
As someone that's used your product, Lesley, but also used other products in the past, I see the value in it, especially from a nervous system, parasympathetic, sympathetic perspective of helping us. I think most of us are in a chronic fight or flight response these days, and that's causing a lot of our challenges. But I'm interested, Lesley, why, when you started doing all that research and started diving deeply into it, other than your innate ability to sell good products and be a good marketer, why did you feel like this was an important sort of tool in your medicine bag?
Well, one, I think everybody and their brother and their mother wanted to be part of an evolving industry. And two, most of them didn't care about what they were putting on the shelves. They were more after that one time, make a quick buck, get out kind of vibe. And some of them had a lot of money to do the marketing, and they were very successful at it. That doesn't mean they had a retention of a customer. So I kind of wanted to do it opposite and retain my customers and show them that if you start with the right one, it might be a little bit more expensive, but it's going to do what cannabinoids are intended to do, and that's to interact with the endocannabinoid system. And every single living species with a backbone has an endocannabinoid system, and therefore should be interacting with cannabinoids. And people are still...
We're not.
Well, they're not, but people are still confused that CBD has to come from a marijuana plant, or that there's psychoactivity involved in it. And the endocannabinoid system is designed to bring the body into homeostasis. It's designed to bring it into balance. People also under the misconception that it's just for pain. Well, yeah, it's amazing for pain and inflammation. And that's probably the first thing the body needs to do to balance, is to reduce inflammation. But, hormones, sleep, anxiety, bone health, brain health, repair,
sleep,
cellular mitochondria. Yeah, all of that. It's for all of that. And you don't need a lot to stimulate and work with the endocannabinoid system. But what you do need is the terpenes. And most companies don't do it because they're expensive. But that's kind of like the Uber to the endocannabinoid system is the terpenes and the drivers. So these are things that we focused on.
It's kind of like, at the moment, I think something I would equate it to, and maybe I can get your opinion on this, Lesley, I would equate it to the zinc conversation at the moment, with using zinc as a driver into the cells with, vitamin D, with quercetin and the COVID.
Everything has a cofactor.
Yeah. One of the elements I really, when I started connecting with you and learning about some of the products that you make, this one in particular, the CBD, one of the immediate elements that I really respected and was drawn to was the fact that it's organically sourced. And I've spoken about this in the podcast already with Lindsay and a couple other guests, but I'm wondering if you can, in your opinion, Lesley, why do you feel organic labeling, especially with CBD products and the marijuana plant and just getting the CBD element from them, why is it important that the organic growth is part of a product like yours?
Well, you can grow anything in shit, or you can grow it in gold. What's wrong, Maya? It's the same thing. Like, why grow? Listen, we don't certify our stuff, but we work with small farmers, and we work where we've tested the soil, because that's more important to me than putting a USDS label, which means fuck it a bucket. If you ask me, it doesn't mean anything. So it's how you grow things, and what's the craft, what's the attention to the craft of the soil. Like, these people are passionate about what they do. Maya's like moaning over there.
Maya is Lesley's beautiful little dog. You might hear her in the background. It's my voice, Lesley. It's my voice.
She's like whining. Do you hear her?
I do. Yeah, I can hear.
Okay.
I can hear.
So it's all about, it's where everything starts, right? Yeah. If you grow a baby in a healthy home, it's going to be a healthier baby. If you grow a baby in a home that's super toxic and not healthy, that baby's going to react. If the mom's a crack addict, the baby's going to be addicted to crack. It's the same.
Yep. 100%.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. If you have a plant in a pot that is growing incorrectly, do you look at the plant or do you look at the soil that the plant is growing in? We're the same, either with the food that we eat, the CBD that we ingest, or us as a being. Yeah. And, going back to the concentration and the impact, if you're looking for a more just from a efficacy and an efficiency perspective, you want the product to be organic because it's going to have more of its natural constituents in it just because of the soil that it's growing in. The other element that you hit on, Lesley, that I want to make sure people heard, the organic labeling, the certifications. And this, I'm yet to find this as a challenge in Australia, but it is definitely a challenge in the US, right? There are certifications that are legit, but there are also many certifications that are not. And your
Australia actually has a very good standard for testing.
Yeah. But many countries do not. So if you're listening, I would, your role as the consumer is to look into this, right? And don't just, like you would any label, don't trust it because you think that the company has your best interests in mind.
Yeah, because they usually don't. But we do.
No, yeah, that's it. All right, I want to switch here, Lesley, here to another topic that I know you're passionate about. More of a sort of, because you live it. And like I said at the start of the conversation, something you're going through right now. And the topic is poo and detoxification. One of...
Love me some good shit.
Yeah. One of the incentives for me to do this podcast was actually, I'm going to plug your podcast here, Lesley, the Holistic Bitches Unfiltered. And you actually did a really good episode. All of them are really powerful, but the one episode about the castor oil pack, I'd recommend listeners, I'll put it in the show notes to go listen to her breakdown of how castor oil sort of impacts your detoxification pathways. But I'm interested, Lesley, why do you think this conversation, either with poo or detox in general, is so often either not talked about enough or not talked about in the right way?
It's the miscombobulations around it, is that people don't understand how the body works, right? They think, oh, I have a liver and that's its point. It detoxes. So I don't have to do anything to detox. Well, if you are living in a toxic environment, if you're living amongst mold, if you're living using all kinds of shit on your skin, in your hair, on your body, if you are eating like a garbage truck, if you are drinking bad water, eventually there's a capacity at which things start to not work. And the other thing is people don't understand, again, how the digestive system really works and how it's supposed to operate. And some people think going to the bathroom once in a while is okay. They don't realize that bowels are intended to move 2 to 3 times a day, just like when you have a baby.
A day. I want to make sure people heard that. A day.
A day. It's like you feed a baby, it shits, it sleeps, feed it. It's repeat, right? Yeah. And that's how it's intended to be. Unfortunately, people start to ruin their digestive system from starting with feeding a child cereals and grains far before the digestive tract is formed. The human digestive tract is not fully formed till the age of 1. Yep. Therefore, it is really dependent on breast milk, if you can, and certain fats and sugars. That's it. It's not meant for carbohydrates. It's not meant for cereal, but that's what people give their kids right away. Yeah. So people don't understand that. So literally the majority of the population is full of shit.
Yeah.
And then they want to know, why do I have anxiety? Why am I depressed? Why this, and this? And I get, yes, your point to the energetic component, but again, why are they storing it? Why are they holding on to it? Where's the fear? Where's what's going on? That
it's all of it.
It's all of it. So I think people are like weirded out by it, or like if I'm like, oh my God, like my clients send me pictures of their poop and I see worms in it, they're like, that's disgusting. I'm like, it's worse that it's living inside of you. Like,
well, so a couple things here. So first of all, what we are not eliminating, we're storing. So that's sort of the first place I go with this. If we are not that 2 to 3 bowel movements a day, if that's not happening, then it's not like there's something in your stomach and it's just vanishing. Or you're consuming food, and if you are in that sort of backed up state, the food that you are consuming, like you're saying, the unorganic processed grains, the processed dairy, the processed oils, the processed sugar, these are the things that are sort of building up, but they're not building up by themselves, right?
And they ferment and they rot inside, and the human colon can literally store 20 to 30 pounds of fecal matter stuck to your gut.
Yeah. And then going back to the worm piece, in nature, what usually comes when you leave some shit out there for a while that's not being cleared, right? It's the fungal and the parasite elements.
Petrifieds. Yeah, exactly. They love that. And that's the best house for them. And the more you feed them, they party.
Continuing with the poo element, one of the things that you and I have in common, Lesley, is our habit, our hobby, our interest in surveying our bowel movements morning, afternoon, and night. I'm wondering if you could share why this is so important for people on this poo conversation.
I mean, listen, your poo tells you a lot about yourself, right? So basically you want sinkers. So you definitely want them to sink. If they're floating, it's usually because there's too much fat that's not being absorbed. So it's going to, oil and water, that whole thing don't mix. And you kind of want 1-2 pieces, that kind of S shape is like that's the most Picasso, but 2-3 pieces is good. You don't want like rabbit pebbles. You don't want obviously a very soft stool. You don't want a very hard stool either. And the color is definitely going to vary based on what you eat, but the more fiber, the more it's going to sink. If you see a bit of mucus is not fat. There's a difference. This is healthy. That's part of like healthy digestion. So it's actually not too bad to see that from time to time. And then just the different modalities to keep the colon working,
moving
properly.
We'll get to that in a second, Lesley. I want to jump to that after this. But just to add to that, that habit. So looking for those characteristics, really starting to have an understanding of what is coming out of you. But put this image in your head as you're listening. Before we had all these beautiful diagnostic tools and doctors and places to go to get tests and studies, how do you think a practitioner would help you understand what is happening on in your internal terrain, right? They'd be looking at what is coming out of your system, or more importantly, what is not coming out of your system. So step into that power. I know one of the reasons that I really enjoy this habit in the mornings is because it empowers you, right? It gives you back the power that sometimes we can give away to an external person, right? No matter how sort of knowledgeable, insightful they may be. So you're just hitting on different modalities here to help us with not just that.
And before you say that, for the people who depend on coffee to have a bowel movement,
yes,
bad news bears. Have your poop first, then your coffee if you're going to keep it. But most people depend on an intrinsic factor to release their bowels.
Yeah.
And caffeine is an intrinsic factor.
And with the coffee, removing it can say a lot, right? So if you're listening to Lesley and you're taking that tip to heart, look at how you feel when you do remove it. So yes, not having a bowel movement would be a good thing to look out for, but how energetically and emotionally depleted or unbalanced are you when you remove that coffee? Sometimes what coffee does also, on top of the detoxification, is it masks things that want to come up. So yeah,
it's also so loaded with mold and pesticides.
Most of them, right?
Like the biggest problem, which creates higher acidity levels. So never had a cup of coffee orally in my life. That's the what is it? You get the crosses, the crosses on top of your straight edge with coffee. I want a gold star.
Want to, with that, Lesley, chat a little bit about, give more value to people listening, ways that we can get that detoxification system pumping. I know
the first thing is opening the channels of elimination.
How do we do that? How do we do that, Lesley?
So I think proper hydration is the easiest and the first step. That's number one. Drinking enough water daily. Dehydration can fix a lot of things. So I think that's the first thing. I definitely think people just generally don't consume enough fruits and vegetables for really good fiber. I think constipating foods like dairy and eggs, I find, well, they could go both ways, but generally dairy creates impact in the wrong way, like literally shit impact. So I think that's good. I think a castor oil pack is amazing because it puts the body into that parasympathetic state, which is generally when you're going to take a shit, is when the body's essentially like
relaxed.
Taking a poop shouldn't be stressful, you know, and if it is, and it's because you have hemorrhoids, it's because things aren't right. So wearing a castor oil pack specifically over the liver, which is the upper right quadrant, allows the muscles there as well, and the colon to really work. It helps to break down the biofilm and get to the microbiome. It reduces inflammation. It balances hormones. So all of that kinds of plays a role. And like generally people who start wearing castor oil packs specifically for constipation generally start to see that over, not too long, that it starts to really wake up and the bowels start to move. And it's the best crap of your life.
I will just say with the castor oil, and you promote this, Lesley, and again, I would recommend to people listening, if you want to go deeper into the castor oil conversation specifically, Lesley has a really good episode on it on her podcast. But one of the things that they talked about that I promote when people ask me about this is really making sure that the oil is quality, right? The materials is quality, because one of the things that blocks us up is those shitty oils themselves, right? So not just the dairy, not just the grains, but those refined oils. So when you're looking for the castor oil, make sure it's the good quality oil, right? There's difference. That
you definitely want to know that it's organic and it's not from the wrong castor bean and stuff for sure.
Yeah. And these nuances, right? We overlook. The other powerful modality that we both share in here, Lesley, that again, I think people overlook within not just their detox regimen, but their health and wellness journey overall, is the powerful idea of sweating, more specifically in an infrared sauna. So tell me,
minerals.
Yes, combining them together. Tell me a bit about this.
So I think minerals are important. Specifically, obviously, I love magnesium. I think that's like the magic mineral. I mean, they're all magical, but magnesium has a huge role, and that's one of the things that it's really good for. And unfortunately, too many people use citrate, and citrate blows out the bowels. That's what it does. Same with things like ascorbics. In a bad way. It interferes with detoxification pathways. Bad news bears. But so minerals are definitely super important. That's why I love the fulvic and the humic. I love the magnesium. I like all the things that I sell in my stores because I wanted them selfishly first for myself. Then to share with everybody.
That's important, Lesley, because often, us as consumers, and I'm a consumer too, and Lesley's a consumer as much as she is a product maker. I think us as consumers, that's what we want to look for. We want to look for someone that, isn't just making products to sell money. They're making products because they're abundant beings and because they value and they see the need for the thing that they're selling, right?
Yeah. So that's the mineral piece. The sweating piece, I mean, listen, I got into infrared saunas probably maybe 4 years ago now, as a regular practice. And I was in a blanket, like a infrared blanket, and we can share in the notes all of these links. And I used it for 2 years straight, and I loved it. I love the way it made me feel. But what's important in that is, listen, this opens up your pores. So you have a way to release. It wakes up the lymphatic system, which wakes up circulation. And if circulation's working, your bowels are going to generally just start to want to work a little bit better. And also parasites and stuff, they don't like heat. Yeah. Right. And an infrared sauna specifically, it heats you from within. I mean, I like to jack mine up first and get it really hot before I go into it. But the real benefit is that it heats you from the inside. So I have that as daily practice. Right now it's on hold because I got a little vertigo from friggin' parasite cleansing.
It's funny that you said that, Lesley. That's all I was thinking as soon as you were sharing this. So one, I hope that's giving some value to people leaning into the sauna. But, as I said at the start of as I said at the start of the episode, Lesley's moving through a cleanse right now. And yes, as she's saying, what the sauna can do, it can help us move through, bring up and out the parasite or the fungal element. But if we're moving through, if it's happening, if we're in it and we need to be mindful, it could exacerbate it, right? Some of the symptoms that you're experiencing, right?
So yeah, so as I'm moving through, I really wanted to commit to, like, I put so many of my clients through the parasite and the detoxing and all those things. And for so long, I took really good care of myself until I didn't want to take care of myself for a little bit. And I was like, okay, well, like, now's a really good time to do it. And our friend, my sister, Taggy, Dr. Taggy tested me and she's like, you have parasites. And I'm like, well, we all have parasites, you know?
Fact.
So as I'm going through this, and it's interesting because the herbs that I'm using are the same herbs that I use, you know, with my clients. They come from a trusted source, yada, yada, yada. However, the bowel herbs were not doing what they were supposed to do. It's not that they weren't strong enough. I just think there's a lot less shit impacted in me because of what I do on, you know, enemas and this and that.
Yeah.
So I think what was happening was I do have parasites, and I think they were coming out or starting to, but the eliminator wasn't strong enough for me. So tonight I have a new one, which I'm excited to use. But anyways, I got vertigo, but I don't think the vertigo is just a physical thing. I think it's a very energetic thing of me being completely out of balance. And like, literally, if your energy vortexes are supposed to go one way, mine are going every fucking which way, the wrong way. Now, today, I feel a bit more balanced, bringing in, you know, modalities that I was using. But yes.
Let me pause you there. So there's a couple of things here I want to break down. So first of all, just going back to the fungal and the parasitical element and taking it slowly in stages, right? I really want to make sure people hear that, right? Do
that guided with someone.
Yes. That's what I'm
Don't
hitting
buy
on.
a tea on the shelf and just detox, because if your channels of elimination aren't open, you're fucked. And you can get really sick. You could fuck with your blood pressure. You could really, it's, you know, people, it's funny that CBD has to be, you know, monitored on the shelves, but people put out these detox teas and all these things, and people buy it because of the marketing, and it's just bad.
Yeah. And the other reason that you want to do it with someone other than them telling you what's happening and helping you through it is that we can feel, if you're doing this by yourself and you get to that point where maybe you were yesterday, Lesley, you could very easily give up. Right. And you could feel like, I'm horrible at this. I'm not meant to cleanse. I'm not meant to do this. So I'm just going to go back to what I was doing. And that's not about that. It's about leaning into it, right? Moving through the pain, teacher, with as much support, much love, much guidance as you can, so you can get to the other side of it, right? It's healing and health is not a stable homeostasis of pure love and joy all the time.
And it's not linear.
No, it's not. And you can be healthy in a state of challenge. You can be healthy in a state of disease, in my opinion.
100%.
But I want to hit on the one element with the sauna here, and then I want to shift to the energetics, because you were just hitting on that. The other powerful element of a sauna therapy as a detox sort of practice that we implement throughout the day is also something you talked about at the start, and it's mitochondrial health. This is something that as a society, we're systemically overlooking, in my opinion. We're not looking. Crazy. Yes, we're not looking at the power of our cells. And sauna therapy.
When you take care of your cells, you take care of your health. So it's the first place we should go. Go on.
And I was just going to say, the sauna is a way to do that. That hormesis, that healthy stress that we get from a sauna, that we get from fasting, that we get from exercise, that supports healthy mitochondrial health. So if you're not going to do it for the detoxing, do it for that.
Yeah. And also people to be mindful as well. You know, if somebody has really burnt out adrenals, and if somebody has a lot of mold or something going on, again, do this guided so that you don't make yourself more sick.
Yep. So, Lesley, I want to switch to another topic now. And we've hit on it a couple of times already in this chat, but I want to go a bit deeper. And it's the idea of having a plant-based lifestyle, but more specifically, how a plant-based lifestyle can support intuitive, energetic connection. And I just want to share a little story here with you and with people listening. One of the first interactions we had on Clubhouse was in a room where you were doing intuitive hits and card pulls. And up to that point in time, you know, my intuitive sense has always been expanding and building in many ways, but I was still relatively fresh in sort of letting it in. And the way that you sort of hold yourself, right, your intuitive laser or taser that you like to call it is quite active all the time. And in my opinion, this is what I want to get your thoughts on. I think a big part of that is due to the plant-based lifestyle that you're living on. I'm wondering what your opinion is, how these things connect in your mind, if they connect, and what your thoughts are.
So listen, I think there's a right way and a wrong way to do everything. And I think you can do plant-based really, really well. And I think you can do it really, really toxic. I think if you're going to do it really, really toxic and you're doing it because you're shifting or whatever, and it's just a starting point, fine. But if that's going to turn into a lifestyle, it's extremely damaging. And I've lived it. I've done it to myself where I've done the damaging plant lifestyle. When you do it in a good way, it's extremely healing. And I think there's many ideas. There's every diet in the book. For me, I think plants heal. And I don't think anyone could argue that. Well, actually people could, and they do. I think plants are healing. I don't think when people are like, well, there's different diets for everybody. Yeah, I understand that, but there's nobody that doesn't thrive off of fruit. There's nobody that doesn't thrive off of vegetables. That's just like crazy talk. And again, staying away from the oils, and like, I don't think a diet high in grains is a really healthy diet. I don't think oatmeal every morning for breakfast is a good idea. I think there's other things you can do to be innovative with food. And I think that when you have very live, you have to think about it. Like, fruits and vegetables are thriving live food, which there's energy to that. So if you are lucky enough that your stuff doesn't have to travel 3,000 miles to get to your plate, you're putting high vibration energies into your body. So energy in, it radiates from the inside out. So when you put that in, it radiates out. So for someone who tells me, meat, chicken, I mean, that's dead. It's dead energy. And I'm not saying do or don't, but bone broth, for instance, makes absolutely no sense to me. Why? You're boiling bones. That's where animals store fear. That's where animals store disease. And that is where I just don't get that. So for me, it was an intuitive thing. I loved it. And I think when you're very clean inside, your energy flows better and your vortexes spin the right way. And that allows clear, like, energy moves more abundantly so you can tap into things.
Yeah, let me just continue from there. And I think there's two sides to this. And one, at the end of the day, I think what everything is made out of is energy, right? And energy can always be transformed into something else. So for example, if there is a chicken or a cow or a pig or whatever you decide to consume that is inside a dark, cold, fearful, scary place where the intention of that animal is to be butchered and killed and to be only commercially available in such a horrible manner, the energy and the intention behind that is obviously creating something that's destructive. Versus if you have a beautiful, chicken that has grown up in your backyard, feeding on the things it's supposed to be fed on, having a life of joy and happiness. And then when you decide to consume the egg that it produces, something that I practice every day is set the intention and a prayer around the food that I eat. So now I'm even transmuting that energy into something more. So what I'm trying to get at here, and maybe we can take this a step deeper here, Lesley, there is a reason that when you go to traditional places around the world, such as like Vipassana retreats or medicine ceremonies with plants, there's a reason that we do energetically diet or cleanse, right? And this goes to your point. It's because even if the animal product is treated in the best way possible, from an energetic perspective, when we remove the animal product, there is a lightness that occurs. There is something that I don't know what it is. I don't profess to be an expert in this, but there is something that a space is open, when we clear, this is why when we fast, for example, I know you've experienced this, Lesley, we can also tune into more of our intuitive gifts. So
Right.
I'm wondering your perspective on this, anything that bubbles up.
I still don't think, I feel like an animal knows when it's going to die. Like their spirits, their souls. So I feel like, and again, when I chose to be plant-based, I still wear leather. Like I'm not vegan. I live a plant-based lifestyle. It's different. Not that makes it better or worse, because for sure that still carries energy. However, I still believe that those animals, whether you're a farmer, they know they're going to die. Like I believe that. I believe that there's fear around that. Like even in the Jewish religion, they use the kashrut, which is the kosher, and part of the kosher laws is to slit the throat in a way that it's supposed to be painless. How the fuck do you slit a throat and it be painless? Like even on your way out, they still feel that.
Well, let me play devil's advocate here, Lesley, because I'm sure you've maybe heard this response to that. The animals still know. What would you say to someone that says that plants are aware, are conscious of the intent that you have? So let's say, for example, I have 2 little plant pots in my little home here that I speak to, that I connect into, that, then there are studies now showing that
that's
intention,
transmitting energy. That's transmitting energy. There's no heartbeat. There are no organs. There's no brain per se. There is still plasma, which is considered to be blood. But I don't think you can I don't think that's an argument. It is a living, live organism, but it's not a mammal. It's not an animal. Animals actually need plants to survive. A lot of animals, that's their food if fed right. And it doesn't have a soul. I don't believe that a plant has a soul. End of story.
Thank you for going deeper. Thank you for going deeper with me, Lesley. And, the point of this, I think within the holistic conversation, I think diet is the most polarizing, the nutritional elements. And the point here that I'm sort of trying to make and come across within this conversation at large is we need to be able to have these conversations. If we can't have these conversations, if we can't from a place of love have 2 different perspectives where we combine together to test our belief systems, then how do we grow as people, right? How do we expand 100%. As individuals? So
100%. And you look at like, for instance, like the Hope for Cancer Center. Okay. You go in there, they turn you into plant-based. However, once you leave and you heal, they start to allow things like eggs and certain things back into the diet. Fish, I think, which to me is just like, I don't really understand that. I believe there's not one nutrient in the world that you cannot obtain from a plant-based lifestyle. People will be like, where's the protein? That's a whole other podcast, where's the this and the that? I don't think you can argue that when it comes to health and healing. And if so, why do they choose to go to that diet? And they're one of the most renowned centers for cancer healing.
I'm already predicting, Lesley, in the future, I might do this. I might, Joe Rogan style, I've always wanted to bring on 2 people that have perspectives and host a discussion between 2 different people, like we sort of do on Clubhouse, for people to get the most value out of, right? Because it's really...
You know who would be good?
Who,
Donnie.
Tony?
Do you know Donnie?
I haven't connected with him. I'll check him out
we'll
though.
Connect you. He's cool.
I want to shift here a bit, Lesley, to another topic that within this sort of holistic conversation, we've talked about the CBD, we've talked about the detox, we've talked about the plants, and I want to go deeper now because this is sort of how I roll. I want to go deeper into emotional healing. And the reason I want to go into it with you is, and maybe you can correct me on this if I'm wrong here, but I've noticed you as the practitioner, you are really expanding more and more into this in the work that you do. And you've probably been doing it for a while. But my question for you, I would love to hear your perspective on why you think the emotional side of healing is so powerful, especially if you're working with a holistic practitioner.
I think a holistic practitioner that doesn't dive into that is a shitty practitioner. End of story.
Full stop.
Yeah. And it's not, obviously my awareness to it is different, since being in Clubhouse, sharing space with yourself and other people, it's different. But I've always been able to ask a client, especially working in digestive health, what trauma happened before this? What really, like before you're diagnosed, did somebody die? Was there a traumatic event? What happened? And there's never been somebody who said nothing. Like there's no way. Every single disease, I believe, has an energetic and an emotional connection to it, everything. And I think that's part when you're doing holistic, it's mind, body, and soul. And I think you actually have to do the mind first. Realistically, you could tame down symptoms for people. But that not just mindset, but that work that is at the root of healing is, I believe, the emotional side.
In my experience, I've shared this with you and even the listeners tuning in, you might have you understand this side of me already. In my experience, it's often the foundation in which the physical symptoms are manifesting from. And don't get me wrong with my words here. It doesn't mean we need to overlook and ignore the physical. I think this should be a part of a protocol. As I always say, this is an and conversation, not an or conversation. But we need to be willing to go deeper, to feel the feels, right? We need to go deeper to move through those maybe traumatic experiences that need to come up and out, need to be integrated. Lesley, what in your experience have you noticed some of the areas of most need of attention when it comes to trauma, emotional healing, how it connects to our, moving through pain?
I think it's pretty straightforward. I think every single human being has trauma and every single human being has pain. I think there's very common stories amongst a lot of humans, whether it comes from the abandonment of either parent, the death of a parent, the abuse of a parent,
sexual,
the neglect. Yeah, all of it. The neglect. People don't write TV stories and movies because they're fucking creative. It's because they're based on, usually there's something there that they're writing or trying to tell through. And I think, the common things, you see thyroid. Okay. Right. We have this conversation a lot, and, I always have said that the thyroid, there's a reason why Synthroid is the number one prescribed medication. And it's not, yes, people have shitty habits 100%. And women specifically have a very difficult time expressing themselves. So do men, but it shows up differently. So, there's that. I think there's, when it comes to the female hormones and stuff, it's a lot of the time the father wound. It's the neglect, it's the self-worth, it's the self-love, it's the abandonment. I think that all houses in the ability to not feel worthy enough to reproduce. Yeah. And that's the reproductive area. Yeah. I think a lot of the stuff in the men is the liver and the heart.
Pause there for a second, Lesley. I want to make that connection for people between the throat and the reproductive centers. One of the biggest connections I've experienced, working with people. Again, I spend a lot of time talking about the inner child and the chakras. The link between the throat and the sacral is the inner child, right? The inner child, those abuse elements that you just talked about, often they occur in childhood around the throat, and the space in the body that the inner child likes to live is in the sacral reproductive center. So if you're listening and you're saying, oh, this is me, that's why, right? It's because those two centers are so intrinsically connected at an energetic and emotional level within the body. Keep going with the male symptoms you were talking about.
So, and it was interesting because, I remember asking this specifically in a room, and Dr. Taggy piped up about it, but it was more of not that I didn't know, but more of a moment of being reassured that the men are more in the liver and in the heart. They hold their fear and their anger and their disappointment in those areas. And that's why we see more men with heart attacks. We see more men with liver disease and corrosive livers. I mean, fatty liver goes across the board, probably both ways. But then you also look at diabetes. Yes, we know there's a food issue, but we know that, the missing out on the good parts of life, or as Dr. Taggy would say, the sweetness in life.
Can you give me your best Dr. Taggy impression?
Oh my God, no, she was totally. But why?
That's it.
That would be Dr. Taggy. But so when you start to break it down, and I think this is actually a very good way for a practitioner to earn trust with the client, is by letting them know that they know that that's there. And that comes into being intuitive and understanding and knowing. But the moment you peel back that layer and they're like, holy fuck, they know.
Yes.
It builds a sort of trust. And I think that's why it's important that you start there. That is not to say or to mitigate or to completely negate the food you eat,
yes,
the water you drink.
It's an
all
and,
of that.
It's an and conversation.
Right? They go together because it's holistic. So,
Lesley,
yes.
let me backtrack a bit. So you said you're spot on with the male element, with the anger and the heart. And a big element with that I want to make sure people hear. So it's the anger, it's the fear, but it's also the grief, right? And how we talked about the thyroid being the space of mostly women, right? Women not being able to express their voice, express their truth. What is another, and that's a sort of societal belief structure that's projected onto women. There's a societal belief structure projected onto men. And what is that? That men should not cry, that men should not show their emotions, that men should not express their grief, express how they're feeling. What is the space and place that's going to show that? It's going to be in that heart center. So that's a super big component. If you're a beautiful man listening to this conversation today and you are having physiological challenges in that chest and heart, I would highly encourage you to find that practitioner, as Lesley said, that you feel safe, supported, and secure with, to be able to speak and express, because that's healing in itself. And
think about a man's desire to eat meat, raw, spicy foods, heavy foods. This plays into the whole emotional thing. I mean, I'm sure there's women who love a bleeding steak, but I think you may find the odds of a man wanting that a little bit more aggressively than a female. And I could be wrong, and you might make me eat my words, but the way people choose and tune into food without recognizing it, certain foods, says a lot about somebody as well.
Well, I 100% agree. I think we've talked about this in the past in regards to addictions, food addictions, right? A craving. Let's use sugar as an example. Do you actually crave the sugar? And yes, we could talk about a fungal and a parasite imbalance, but let's just keep it for an emotional level here. Are you actually craving the sugar because that's what you need? No. Or are you craving the sugar to fill a hole that you actually want to just express and fill yourself, right? So
forget about it just being sugar, food in general, the food that gives that dopamine hit, that gives that brings the serotonin and the tryptophan and all your neurotransmitters to be like, oh, that's exactly what I needed. Or to the, people who binge eat, and to the people who, eat till they're so full, because that's comfort, right? So it's a lack of, and it's a void, and it's filling something. So whether it's drugs, sex, food, whatever it is, people just don't realize how harmful, food is. I mean, it might be the lesser of the evil from heroin in a hamburger or French fries, but it's, it catches up. It might take longer, but it catches up.
I want to share a quick little story here to highlight this. And it happened in a space that you created a couple of weeks ago. If you are not following Miss Lesley on Clubhouse, she has one of the most powerful, insightful communities I've found for holistic and natural healing. It's called the Holistic Bitches Club. So tap in, follow, join. You'll see us there weekly. And in that club a couple of weeks ago, you had a a lady come up and she was talking about how she lost her daughter. And since losing her daughter, she gained weight. She gained a lot of weight. She gains a lot of extra pounds. And we were tuning in, trying to support and help her. And I asked her, I was trying to make this connection for her between the food and the emotional element. And I asked her if she could explain in one word how she overall felt about losing her daughter. And what do you think she replied?
Did she say empty?
She said empty.
I remember.
She said empty. And it's just like a goosebumps when I share that. It just highlights it beautifully. What Lesley and I are saying here is you need to take it to this deep energetic and emotional level, because if you're not, you're overlooking something. You're missing the story.
And it's often, like I said, I think today in your room, we were saying the signs and everything are right there.
Yeah.
Like it's all right there. It's whether we want to listen to them, and they're going to keep coming back, over and over and over again until we finally get it, accept it, utilize it, and work through it.
Agree. We have to be willing to listen. Lesley, before we finish with our final question, I want to give you the space now, as people have been listening to you from what we've been talking about CBD, we've been talking about the detox pathways, about food, about the emotional elements. If someone wants to learn more about you, if they want to hire you as a coach, a practitioner, if they want to buy some of your powerful products, what do they do?
So the Holistic Health Genius on Facebook and on Instagram. The Holistic Bitches on Clubhouse, the Holistic Health Genius .store for the store, or just reach out and spark a conversation. And I think one thing too, and my podcast, the Holistic Bitches Unfiltered,
with a new episode coming out very soon.
Yeah, I think it's episode 20. But I think there's distinctive leaders in this space of healing yourself being one of them, but there's leaders, and we have to be mindful of who we take information from, especially in this space. Anybody can become a coach. It's different than being designated, and not that letters make somebody more powerful or authoritative, but there's usually a bit of regulation. So just be mindful of where you're taking your information from, and be mindful of the person that's there to make a dollar and the person that's there to invest and make money at the same time. We all have to eat, live, but be mindful of that. And I think before we go here, so I get to ask you a question.
Okay. Well, I want to hit me first before I get to my final one. Okay. But just to add to that, Lesley, because it's beautiful what you said, and it's really why I appreciate you as a person, other than me just loving you very much. I think everyone listening to you can relate to this. You cut through the shit, right? And that authenticity that you just talked about in terms of connecting to someone who can support us, that is from that space of truth, right? So you do that really well, my friend. Hit me.
Thank you.
Hit me with the question.
And people are so afraid to invest in themselves. If something's expensive, go for it. Some of the best things I have in my realm of wellness are expensive. And I chose those things over other things, like my sauna, like my water system, like my pots that I cook with, The other people might think that's crazy. I think it's crazy that somebody goes to Starbucks every single day and buys stupid shit. But anyways, my question to you is, why are you so enthralled with the energetic component of healing? Why, where did you come into that space? When?
I would say, so when I came into it, I think it's been a progressive shift. I think over the last 2 years has been specifically the shift into the energetic, emotional, and spiritual side of things. So to give a date, probably the last 2 years. But I would say the impetus for that, and the reason why, is I, as a coach, as a practitioner, as someone who hosts this podcast, someone who does all the things I do in the world, as an individual, I'm always looking for more. I'm always trying to go deeper, because I think I'm always wanting to help others and also myself from the most systemic and deep kind of way. And I found that taking things to the energetic level, taking things to the emotional and spiritual level is where I've noticed I've had really big shifts and really big changes. And whether we're looking to heal our pain, whether we're looking to heal childhood wounds of trauma, whether we're looking to become more holistically and naturally vibrant, I think that's really important. That's really important. And then I guess the final thing, and this might be very woo, but I know you can go there with me, Lesley. A big theme of this podcast is being a love antenna. And when I take it to the deepest layer possible, that the deepest layer energetically possible is love. And I say love as a way of being, love as a connecting to a higher power. And for me, that's when the shifts took a deep dive. That's when the shifts took a exponentially expansive thrust into what is true. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and just wait, one more. Do you find that you learn the best through books? Like, where do you find your innate ability to learn this?
So where did that come from, or what's the best way that I consume knowledge?
Like where, like I said in the beginning, like I truly believe this is past life work that I've been doing forever.
Yeah.
But is yours books? Is yours what for you is your greatest learning tool?
So I related very heavily to what you were sharing about the innate wisdom connecting back in. And I've actually found that through, so I read a lot, I consume a lot, I spend a lot of time in Clubhouse, spend a lot of time, studying, whether it be through courses, whether it be through just normal books. But I'm noticing more and more, the more I gain and read and obtain, the more I realize that
I know that.
Yes. Yeah. It was there the whole time, or it feels really good. Right. I'll read, like, for example, and this is what I'm studying right now. I'm studying right now the connection between aliens and past lives and just the history of extraterrestrials on this earth and how it connects to how we have a soul that might be not just a human soul, might be an extraterrestrial soul, really out there woo-woo stuff. And I'm reading like so many books on it, but I'm also, it's making me excited. And there's something inside of me that's saying, oh, this is familiar. This is not strange. This is not crazy. This is not some person that's making up shit. It feels familiar, feels home. It resonates in a very deep way. So and I connect that to all the information I obtain. Does that make sense?
That's my question.
Thank you for asking.
The final word.
I love you, my friend. Well, one last question from me as we finish, and we just hit on it briefly. But a theme of this podcast, Lesley, is connecting back to that love word. So put very simply, how do you define that word? How do you define love?
Shit. I feel like I'm on like Miss USA. How do I define love? I think love is essentially the be all and end all of life. I think how it should be, you're conceived, it should be, not everyone, but by love, you're brought in, welcomed by love. And then you go through the journey of loving others, loving yourself, hopefully. And then when you leave loved, and you move through into the next realm, into a space of love. Although, technically we don't know what's on the other side, but I think love heals. I think love is healing, but I think it's really the be all and end all of everything.
Beautifully said, my friend. Lesley, I love you very much. Thank you for coming on this podcast with me. I'm so excited to edit this and bring it out into the world so you beautiful listeners can hear it. I will end it there. Thank you for coming. And if you're listening, love you too. Beautiful listeners out there in the listening world. I hope you have a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Lesley and I love you very much. This has been another installment of the Cosmic Love Antenna. And until next time, have a beautiful, loving week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Cosmic Love Antenna podcast. We hope you enjoyed. Be sure to follow Harrison on Instagram, Twitter, and Clubhouse at Harrison Ma. That's Harrison, Meagher.